I come at you, you better not duck me, son. You better not duck me, son. I'm telling you.
Is Keith Thurman the new boogeyman in the welterweight division? Let's talk about it. Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? You know, it wasn't that long ago that Terence Crawford was on the outside looking in. All the top welterweights, they were invited to this party, and Terence Crawford was never invited. But you fast forward to present day, and now all of a sudden, Terence Crawford, he actually has an invitation. And he didn't have to sign with Al Heyman to get this invitation. Terence Crawford has always said it doesn't matter who you're with. If you're with Top Rank or PBC, any fight can be made. And that's been proven because we've seen Deontay Wilder fight Tyson Fury. We've seen Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao. If the two guys want to fight, then the fight will happen. This is what Terence Crawford said. TC was absolutely right because now PBC fighters are saying that they want to fight Terence Crawford. Started with Shawn Porter after he lost to Errol Spence, and now you have Keith Thurman, who has proven that he's serious about taking a Terence Crawford fight. Keith Thurman first came out and he mentioned Crawford's name, saying all Crawford has to do is send me a contract. When he said that, no one took Keith Thurman seriously, but then we soon seen how serious Keith Thurman was when he continued to mention Terence Crawford's name. He was asked when he did an interview, would he rather fight Errol Spence first or Terence Crawford? He said, I would rather fight Terence Crawford first because he's starting to get under my skin. Now, when Crawford found out that Thurman was calling him out, he didn't take it serious at all. He said, quote, shut your ass up. You don't know what you want to do because I bet you if contract be sent your ass, we'll find a way out. So stop playing with my name. Now, guys, if you recall, when I reported on this, when I quoted that Keith Thurman was calling out Terence Crawford, I said Crawford should call Keith Thurman's bluff. Have Top Rank write up a contract and send it out to him to call his bluff. Now, not only did Team Crawford not do that, but surprisingly, they just announced that they don't want the Keith Thurman fight. And Keith Thurman's trainer, Bomac, Brian McIntyre, he explained why they don't want the Keith Thurman fight. He did an interview on a podcast, The Boxing Voice, and this is what he had to say. I'm gonna play this clip, and then I'm gonna give you guys my take. Check it out, guys.
Fighting, it gotta have meaning to these fights and shit. Keith Thurman don't got no damn belt. Do he? No, he ain't even ranked in the top 5 in the welterweight. Pierce he want to clear the division out. And who got the 2 belts left? Pacquiao and Errol Spence. And those are the 2 fights that Terence won. It's real simple. Why would I waste my time or even sit down and say, man, we used to fight that motherfucker. Man, fuck all that shit. Look, going to camp for 2.5 months and shit, and then go all through all of that, all finding sparring partners. I'd rather waste my time. I'd rather waste my time. Be quiet. I'm on the phone. I'd rather waste my time doing that looking for some sparring for Pacquiao or Errol Spence than try to do it for Keith Thurman. It won't mean anything if Terence did beat that dude. What is it going to say? What is it going to say? Nothing. Oh, Terence beat Keith Thurman. He should have beat him anyway because, Keith's arm is hurting or his hands is always hurting. Come on, man.
Now, let me start by saying this. Now, Bomac is my boy. I know him personally. But the truth is, the only way what he said would make sense is if Bomac is telling us that Terence Crawford is only going to fight Pacquiao or Errol Spence, meaning he's just going to sit on the shelf. He's not going to fight anyone else unless that fighter has a legitimate title in the welterweight division. Because this is exactly what Bomac just said. His reasoning for why they didn't want Keith Thurman is because Keith Thurman does not have a belt. So I guess that means that's ruling out every other welterweight that's not named Errol Spence or Manny Pacquiao, right? Something else my man Bo said I would have to completely disagree with. He said no one wants to see that fight. I'd have to completely disagree with that. Everyone would love to see Terence Crawford versus Keith Thurman as opposed to Crawford versus Kell Brook or Crawford versus Amir Khan. Crawford versus the Mean Machine. Even though the Mean Machine, that was his mandatory, he had to fight him. And he was a good opponent. But when it comes to what the fans would rather see, we know they would rather see Crawford versus Thurman. I think Crawford versus Thurman is an even bigger fight than Crawford versus Porter because styles make fights and the personalities would be great building up that fight. And on top of it, this is the type of fight that Crawford needs to build up a mega fight against Errol Spence. Errol Spence has already been fighting all of these guys in the welterweight division, all of the top guys that were willing to get in the ring with him. He's going to fight against Danny Garcia next. He was the first person to beat and stop Kell Brook. He already fought Sean Porter. This is a great invitation for Terence Crawford to be in that circle of the top 5 welterweights. And when I say be in the circle, I mean get one of these guys on his resume. Bo Mack says, what do we have to gain by beating Keith Thurman? You have a lot, especially if you can be the first person to stop Keith Thurman or knock him down a couple times. Just beat him worse than Manny Pacquiao did. Now, if Keith Thurman had been knocked out 3 times already, then I could see someone saying, we have nothing to gain by fighting someone like Keith Thurman. But that's not the case. He lost, he only has 1 loss, and it was a competitive loss against Manny Pacquiao. So Terence Crawford, he has a lot to gain. He has a lot to gain by getting in the ring with a Sean Porter or a Keith Thurman. I think passing on Sean Porter and Keith Thurman is a terrible business move. It's a terrible business move. I mean, sure, TC, he can sit on the shelf and he could just wait around for an Errol Spence or a Manny Pacquiao, but I don't think that's what he's gonna do. But it's not gonna make sense if he fights someone else who doesn't have a title after we just heard what Bo Mack said. He said that Crawford, he only wants to fight for the titles. That's putting more pressure on Terence Crawford to say that. It's gonna make the announcement very, very interesting when we find out who Crawford is going to fight next. Because there's no better opponent than Sean Porter or Keith Thurman outside of Errol Spence or Manny Pacquiao. Unless Crawford is planning on fighting a champion at 154. We'll have to see. Now I'll close out with this point. We're gonna have these decafs, these Canelo fans and others that are gonna try to compare Terence Crawford's situation to Canelo Alvarez's situation, him avoiding Jamal Charlo, him avoiding Demetrius Andrade. Let me go ahead and distinguish the situation. First of all, I don't believe Crawford not fighting Sean Porter or Keith Thurman is a good look. I wanna make that clear. But at the same time, if you're trying to compare his situation to Canelo's, you have to remember the difference is with Terence Crawford, even though I don't agree with what he's doing, Terence Crawford wants to actually fight the #1 guy in the division. Canelo's situation is the complete contrary. He's avoiding the #1 guys in every division that he fights at. He doesn't want to fight Jamal Charlo. He doesn't want to fight Andrade. Those are the 2 top champions in the middleweight division, a division that he fights at. Terence Crawford's situation, the 2 guys that he doesn't want to fight have both come off of losses. He wants to fight the guy that actually beat Sean Porter in his last fight. And he wants to fight the guy that actually beat Keith Thurman in his last fight, which is usually the way a playoff would be structured, right? You play against a team that just came off of a win, not the team that just lost. And this is why this is so funny when you think of the hypocrisy of the whole situation. Once again, we're only comparing Crawford to Canelo's situation. Another difference with Canelo Alvarez is Canelo Alvarez actually vacated his belt to avoid his #1 contender, his mandatory, which was Jamal Charlo. Crawford has never vacated his belt to avoid anyone. On top of that, remember when Jamal Charlo, I'm forgetting the guy's name, you guys have to help me out, but remember when Jamal Charlo had that very close fight with Matt Karlboff, right? Now, he actually won the fight, regardless of what people say. He won the fight. And even though he won the fight, because the fight was so close, Canelo fans, they were saying just off of that performance, he didn't deserve to fight against their Canelo Alvarez, right? So if you put everything in perspective, imagine if Terence Crawford had his Hope insurance. Can you imagine what they would be saying? Keith Thurman just came off of a loss. Sean Porter just came off of a loss. They don't deserve to fight Terence Crawford. Crawford wants to fight the guys that actually beat those guys. This is what they would be saying. We know this to be the case because once again, they said this even though Karlboff lost to Jermall Charlo, they still said this. So imagine if Jermall Charlo had an official loss to Karlboff on his record. So we know what time it is. But at the same time, I'm still telling you guys, I truly believe Crawford should be fighting Keith Thurman or Sean Porter. If Terence is not going to fight Errol Spence or Manny Pacquiao in this very next fight, his next opponent should be either Keith Thurman or Sean Porter. Now see, Canelo fans, this is the difference between you and me. You guys would never admit that Canelo needs to fight Jermall Charlo, needs to fight Demetrius Andrade. You will sit there and make all the excuses in the world saying you don't want to see him fight the best, right? Once again, we're not talking about a guy who just came off of a loss. We're talking about the undefeated champions with titles. Terence Crawford is going after the champions in his division that has belts. You got Canelo Alvarez, who's avoiding the champions with belts in the divisions he campaigns at. And here I am still saying that Crawford, he should fight these guys if he's not going to wait around for Errol Spence or Manny Pacquiao when it comes to his very next fight. You will never hear Canelo Alvarez fans putting pressure on Canelo to do what's right. And Canelo, he should be pressured more than anyone because it's the best guys, it's the undefeated champions that Terence Crawford is calling out. Those are the same guys that Canelo is avoiding in his division. So please stop trying to compare Crawford's situation to Canelo Alvarez's situation. It ain't nowhere near the same. It ain't even apples and oranges, it's apples and rocks. But with that being said, once again, this puts a lot of pressure on Terence Crawford when it comes to his announcement on who he will fight next. Because with that huge PBC lineup, you got all these great fights. You got Errol Spence versus Danny Garcia. You got Lomachenko versus Teofimo Lopez, probably the only real good top-ranked fight of the year, and just many other fights. Both of the Charlo brothers are matched up tough. You have a lot of great fights. So the question is, who is Terence Crawford going to fight next if he's not going to just sit on the shelf and wait for Errol Spence or Manny Pacquiao? That would have been a great addition to 2020 for Terence Crawford to get in the ring with a Sean Porter or Keith Thurman. Hopefully Terence Crawford, he reconsiders. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. You know, I always say on this channel, pay-per-view fights should actually be free. And now the day has come where I'm about to hook you up with an app where you can watch all your pay-per-view events, boxing, UFC, etc. for free. I want to introduce Block TV, the best internet streaming television app out there. They provide over 3,600 channels, including HBO, Cinemax, Showtime, and Starz. They have a massive video on demand library with over 40,000 of the new release movies and the latest TV series. And it also includes DVR. So you're getting all of this for $34.99 a month. And once again, that includes free pay-per-view. So this one right here is a no-brainer, guys, because back in Las Vegas, I was paying damn near $200 a month for my cable. Those days are long gone now. So to get the app, make sure you guys go over to getblocktv.com and put in my promo code and get 30% off your first month. You also get a free month for every friend you refer. The promo code is DBNation. Fellas, I've got some great news for you. If you've lost your hair or have a receding hairline, the time has come when you can finally get your hairline back through a process called scalp micropigmentation. So here's how it works. It's a hair tattoo that replicates the look of your hair follicles when you have fully shaved it down. Basically, you will end up with a haircut shape up or an edge up. What they do is they tattoo small dots that look like hair follicles in the areas where you have lost your hair, and then blend it with your existing hair. You can even choose what type of hairline you want, hard shape up or soft and natural finish. And to maintain it, all you gotta do is shave your hair every few days, which is something you already were probably doing anyway. So if you wanna get this hookup for my brothers out there in the UK and Europe, make sure you check out the Sculptus on Instagram. And for my brothers out there in the States, make sure you go ahead and contact my man Scalp Carolinas on Instagram. And when you go on their pages, you can see for yourself what these guys look like before. I mean, these guys are literally hair magicians. I've never seen anything like this before, but all I can tell you guys is this a serious game changer for us men. So make sure you get in contact with Sculptus and Scalp Carolinas on Instagram.